Okay, so you're here because you really want to get a handle on English right. Like really learn it properly.
Yeah.
Without wasting time. So let's just jump right in. This is your deep dive into really mastering English in 2025. No messing around.
Yeah, exactly. We've gone through and picked apart this awesome resource from a YouTube channel called Learn English Through Stories and Novels. And we're going to give you the most effective strategies, like maybe even some surprising ones, to help you boost your English skills no matter what level you're at.
Right? And forget about those boring old textbooks for now. What we want to do is give you like practical ways to make English a part of your daily life.
Yeah.
So it feels less like homework and more like just something you do naturally. So are you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first. We got to build a good, solid foundation, right?
Yeah. And it's really interesting that this YouTube transcript we're looking at starts off by talking about motivation and consistency. And they use this analogy of building a house. And I think it's a really good one because your desire to learn English, your reason why you want to do it, that's like the foundation. It's worth taking a minute to think about that for yourself. What's really driving you? I read somewhere that learners who are intrinsically motivated, like they have a genuine love for the language or the culture, they tend to be more successful in the long run. So think about what excites you about English and focus on those things to keep yourself going.
That makes so much sense. And once you've got that why figured out,
Right.
that you really have to immerse yourself in the language, right? But the good news is you don't need to like book a flight to England or something to do that. You can create your own little English-speaking world right where you are.
Exactly. And the transcript gives some really simple ways to do this, like tuning in to kids shows or listening to podcasts or music in English. Even if you're not understanding every single word at first, you're still like training your ears to the sounds and the rhythm of English.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was learning Spanish, I used to watch my favorite movies with subtitles. I would start with subtitles in my own language, and then I'd switch to English subtitles. It was amazing. And that moment when you suddenly realize you're understanding what's being said without having to translate it in your head, man, that's a great feeling.
It really is. It's like magic almost.
Yeah.
And another thing that the transcript talks about is the fear of speaking. So many people are afraid to speak English because they're worried about making mistakes. But actually, mistakes are super valuable learning opportunities.
That's so true. Like every time you make a mistake, you're figuring out what you need to work on,
Right. They're not failures. They're like stepping stones. And I love the advice in the transcript about just speaking out loud, even if it's to yourself. They give this funny example of like narrating your everyday tasks while you're cooking. So you could be like, I am chopping onions. Now I'm putting the onions in the pan. It might feel silly at first, but it really does help you get comfortable with using the language.
I like that. And another thing that's really encouraging is that you don't need to have this huge vocabulary to start speaking English. The transcript emphasizes that focusing on high-frequency words is key. The words that you use all the time in everyday conversation, like go, eat, happy, work. The important thing is to actually use these words, like put them into sentences and ask questions with them.
Yes. Don't just try to memorize long lists of words. Actually use them. And, there will be times when you feel like you're not making progress or you've hit a plateau. But it's just like a baby learning to walk. They fall down so many times, but they keep getting back up. And eventually they're running around. So just remember that learning a language takes time and effort. It's like any other skill,
So we've got that strong foundation in place.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about reading, because reading can actually help you start thinking in English.
Right. And what's interesting about the transcript is that it talks about reading not just as a way to learn new words, but also as a way to understand how the language works naturally. Like how sentences are structured and how grammar is used in real life. And they recommend starting with simple things like children's stories or short articles because it's important to enjoy what you're reading.
Totally. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to keep doing it right.
Yeah.
And I love their advice about trying to figure out the meaning of new words from the context before you look them up in the dictionary. It really makes you think.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle. And then once you think you know what the word means, you can check the dictionary to see if you're right. And then the most important thing is to use that new word in your own sentences. That's how you really make it your own.
Exactly. And, another thing that helped me a lot was narrating my daily life in English. Like even just those little thoughts in your head, I'm making coffee. It smells really good. It sounds silly, but it's like constant practice.
It is. It's a way to kind of shift your internal monologue into English. And, Reading also exposes you to grammar in a natural way. You see how different tenses are used and how sentences are put together without having to memorize a bunch of rules. So, for example, you might learn the present perfect continuous tense just by seeing it used over and over again in sentences like, she has been studying for 2 hours.
It's like learning by osmosis almost.
Exactly. And reading out loud is another great way to improve your pronunciation and get more comfortable with the rhythm of English. Even if you only do it for 10 minutes a day, it can make a big difference.
Yeah, I know some people feel self-conscious about reading out loud, but it really does help. And, the transcript tells this story about someone who challenged themselves to read a slightly more difficult book and how proud they felt when they finished it. It just shows that it's good to push yourself a little bit, but it's also important to choose material that keeps you engaged and motivated.
Absolutely. And consistency is key here. It's better to read for a short time every day than to try to cram in a long reading session once a week. So try to find a time that works for you, like maybe during your commute or before you go to bed, and make it a habit.
Yeah, make it part of your routine. And don't forget about the power of a simple notebook. Write down new words and phrases that you come across, and then review them regularly. You can even try to use them in your own sentences. I used to carry a little notebook around with me everywhere so I could jot down new words whenever I heard them.
That's a great idea. And I love the suggestion in the transcript about summarizing what you've just read in your own words. It's a fun way to check your understanding and practice your speaking skills at the same time.
It is fun. It's like turning reading into a game. Okay, so we've talked about building a strong foundation and the importance of reading. Now let's move on to writing.
Yeah, because writing is another really important skill for mastering English. It helps you organize your thoughts and improve your grammar. And the good news is that it's okay if your writing isn't perfect when you're first starting out. Everyone makes mistakes.
That's so true. And I think the transcript gives some really good advice about starting small. Like writing simple sentences about your everyday life and then gradually adding more detail. So instead of just writing, I went to the park, you could write, this morning I walked to the park near my house and saw some children playing on the swings.
Exactly. And keeping a daily journal is a great way to practice writing without feeling too much pressure. You can just write whatever comes to mind. And the transcript even includes a sample journal entry to give you an idea of how to get started.
I like that. And I think it's a really cool idea to practice English conversations through writing. Like imagine you're texting a friend in English. It's a fun way to prepare for real-life conversations.
It is. And another way to improve your writing is to learn from examples. So read different types of writing, like letters, emails, stories, and pay attention to how the sentences are structured and how the words are used. It's like studying the blueprints of good writing.
And it's important to choose writing topics that you're interested in so it doesn't feel like a chore. You could write about your favorite movie or describe a memorable experience. You make it fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And as you get more comfortable with writing, start to focus on grammar and vocabulary. The transcript recommends learning one new grammar rule or one new word each day, and then try to use it in your writing. It's a small step, but it makes a big difference over time.
It's all about those small, consistent efforts. And don't forget to review and edit your writing. That's how you really improve your clarity and make sure you're expressing yourself clearly.
Right. And set small, achievable goals for yourself so you can track your progress and stay motivated. And if you're feeling brave, ask someone to give you feedback on your writing. It can be really helpful to get another perspective.
Oh yeah, getting feedback is so valuable. It can help you see things you might not have noticed on your own. Okay, so we've talked about the foundation writing. Now let's get into some more advanced long-term strategies for really taking your English to the next level.
Yeah, so the transcript talks about building your own personal English toolkit, which I think is such a cool idea. And this toolkit could include things like a dedicated journal for practicing your writing custom vocabulary lists focused on your interests or your career goals, even an audio recorder so you can listen back to yourself speaking or reading and see how you're doing. Like if you're a doctor, you might create a vocabulary list of common medical terms and practice using them in sentences.
I love the idea of making custom vocabulary lists. It's so much more effective than just trying to learn random words from a dictionary. And using an audio recorder is a great way to get feedback on your pronunciation. It's like having your own personal speech coach.
It is. And another important thing is to actively immerse yourself in everyday English situations. So pay attention to labels when you're out and about. Practice asking questions when you're traveling. Even learn those little filler phrases that native speakers use all the time. Like, let me think, or that's an interesting point.
Those little phrases make such a big difference. And then there are idioms and phrasal verbs. Those are the things that really make your English sound natural and fluent.
Totally. Like, instead of saying start a conversation, you could say break the ice. Or instead of saying I'm looking forward to it, you could say I can't wait.
Yeah, those idioms and phrasal verbs add so much color to your language. And the transcript gives some great examples like look forward to, get along with, run out of. The key is to not just learn what they mean, but to actually use them in your own speaking and writing.
Right. Make them part of your active vocabulary.
Okay, and speaking of pronunciation, have you ever heard of the shadowing technique?
Yeah. That's where you choose some audio that you enjoy listening to, and you basically try to imitate the speaker. You try to copy their rhythm, their intonation, their pronunciation as closely as possible.
It's like you're their shadow. And the transcript explains how to do it. You basically listen to a short section of audio, and then you pause it and try to repeat what you just heard. And you keep doing that until you feel like you're starting to sound more like the speaker.
It's a really cool technique, and it can really help you improve your pronunciation and your fluency.
Now, there will be times when you feel discouraged or frustrated, like you're not making progress. But when you feel that way, just remember that everyone who has ever learned a new language has felt that way at some point.
Yeah.
It's normal. And a good thing to do is to read about or listen to stories of other people who have successfully learned English. It can be really inspiring.
It is. It reminds you that it's possible. And, another thing that can help is to involve your friends and family in your learning process. You could make it into a game or a challenge, or just ask them to help you practice or give you feedback.
And don't forget to celebrate your successes along the way. When you reach a milestone like mastering a new grammar point or having your first conversation in English, reward yourself. It'll help you stay motivated.
Absolutely. And remember, learning English is a journey. It's a process of self-discovery and personal growth. There will be ups and downs, but the important thing is to keep going. Focus on progress, not perfection.
That's such good advice. Well, there you have it. A whole bunch of awesome strategies and advice for mastering English in 2025, all based on that fantastic YouTube resource from Learn English Through Stories and Novels.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I hope it's giving you a clearer roadmap for your English learning journey. Now, I want to leave you with this thought. What's your personal why for learning English? And how can you use one or two of the techniques we talked about today to start making progress this week? Think about it.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time.